Hello, peoples, and welcome to Esoterica Cinema, the program where we take films and discuss the hell out of them. My name is Jason Peters, and with me, as always, is the man who spends his free time performing couples therapy for cats and their humans, Mr. Ryan Seybold.
Ooh, what's up, Jason? How's it going, buddy?
We're not here to discuss that in detail. No, today we are here to discuss a movie called The Red Shoes. Ryan, do you have a description for us?
That's right, Jason. In the words of David Bowie, get ready to put on your red shoes and dance the blues, because today we're wrapping up our 4-film series covering the careers of filmmakers Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger, known collectively as the Archers, with arguably their most popular film, The Red Shoes, from 1948. The film follows Vicky Page as she strives to reach the top of her career, joining the world-renowned ballet company operated by Boris Lermontov. Vicky rises to the stardom she so passionately trained to achieve, but she quickly finds out the reality of the sacrifices she must make as Boris denies her of her budding romance with her upstart composer, Julian Craster. She finds herself in the middle of an emotional tug-of-war when she is forced to choose between artistic perfection and true love, and struggles with the impacts of her decisions on those around her. The film stars ballet dancer Moira Shearer as Vicky, and reunites the Archers with Anton Walbrook as Boris, who we previously loved in their film Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, along with Marius Goring as Julius, who we previously loved as the conductor in Matter of Life and Death. There's a ton to cover here, including this film's initial failure, slowly turning into becoming one of the most successful British films of all time, and landing in a number 9 spot on BFI's Greatest British Films. 2 Oscar wins, a Golden Globe, a Martin Scorsese-funded restoration, and on. But before I go any further, I've got to ask you, as always, my friend, what did you think about this movie, Jason?
Ryan, definitely going to be happy to tell you in my opening statement right here. Now, The Red Shoes is a lavish technical accomplishment that stands as Powell and Pressburger's most cinematic achievement. I was enthused by the colorful, fantastic production and costume design that was given much care and attention by Hein Heckroth, and longtime collaborator and cinematographer Jack Cardiff is doing arguably the best work of his career behind a Technicolor camera, allowing all of Powell's primary colors to positively leap off the screen, which is why it's so unfortunate that I found the film to ultimately be a letdown. While Red Shoes moves with a robust pace no other Archers film does, and features an admittedly bravura 17-minute ballet sequence as the centerpiece of the film, the screenplay and characterizations here are actually pretty plotting. While my eyes and ears were filled with dazzling imagery and sounds, my mind just couldn't get past the fact that I didn't give a lick about the plight of any single character, even with wonderful actors that you mentioned, the likes of Moira Shearer, Marius Goring, and the incredible Anton Walbrook, who astounded as our good friend Theo in Colonel Blimp. Moreover, the narrative is threadbare and uninteresting, providing very few moments of actual drama. As a matter of fact, once the ballet sequence concluded, I felt like the rest of the film stood as kind of dull and arguably shallow.
Sure.
To the point that when we get to what should be a strongly dramatic conclusion, I'd kind of already been waiting for it to be over, as it was clear the production had pretty much used up all of its tricks. Ryan, this is a film that I really, really wanted to love, and part of me wonders if more of that would reveal itself on a second viewing. However, I don't know that there's going to be a second viewing for old boy Jason. What did you think, buddy?
Well, I own it now. I bought a hard copy, so I'll definitely be watching this at some point to get my money's worth. No, we're pretty much in lockstep here. I feel like this is a technical masterpiece, pulling together all the things I've loved in the Archers' previous films, and somehow reaching beyond to achieve something even greater. I'm not in the slightest way a fan of ballet or the dance scene, but even I can give that 17-minute ballet sequence its flowers. The cinematography by Jack Cardiff was firing on all cylinders here, giving us the most dynamic and cutting-edge use of camera and blocking I've seen from this era. And it was a shame to see he wasn't even nominated for an Oscar for this. Notably not joining the team this time was their longtime production designer Alfred Younga, who after winning an Oscar for Black Narcissus, went on to go run MGM UK's art department. I immediately noticed his name not in the opening titles and sadly told myself, well, Ryan, I guess you're not getting any Younga. He was replaced.
Oh, goodness. Dude.
He was replaced out. Yes. You're not getting any younger. He was replaced.
You're getting me on all of these, buddy. You're getting me on all of these. Demi more or less.
Oh,
Continue.
man. He was replaced, however, with German painter Hein Heckroth, who previously worked with the Archers as a costume designer, and holy smokes did he crush it. Heckroth won an Oscar for Best Art Direction on this one, and he deserved every moment of it. The score by Brian Easdale fit in so much better with the tones and themes of this film than I felt it did with his last Archers collaboration of Black Narcissus. I'm not alone there, as he won both an Oscar and Golden Globe for Best Score. And of course, the acting of Moira Shearer, who I should mention wasn't even an actress, but a ballet dancer, the brooding of Anton Walbrook, and impassioned acting of Marius Goring were all top-notch. What left me hanging yet again, though, was the setup. So much attention was given to Vicky Page's rise to fame that I wasn't left with much more than crumbs for her budding love for her composer Julian Craster. So the ultimate expected buy-in from me, as the film was percolating her choices between her career and her romance, fell flatter than a dancer on train tracks. Overall, though, I do see this film's appeal. It's definitely a cornerstone to modern cinema.
Absolutely. So, Ryan, I think a good place for us to start today is by delving into the production design and cinematography, which, as we've discussed, are every bit as good as you can ask for.
Absolutely.
Now, I will say that we've covered the background and career of Jack Cardiff pretty extensively as part of this Powell and Pressburger miniseries. But that being said, it was interesting to learn about the unique techniques involved in bringing this vision to life, which actually included ramping the frame rate up and down to affect the speed at which the actions and characters are presented, and even going so far as to remove some of the glass from his lenses to allow for the purity of expression that Michael Powell was looking for. But the real star of the show here is costume and set designer Hein Heckroth, who had never acted as a set designer prior to his work here. As you mentioned, he hailed from Germany. He made a name for himself in Hollywood as a costume designer and did develop a relationship with Michael Powell as a result of being hired to do the costumes for A Matter of Life and Death, a film that we both liked. Now, his background was as a painter, which you mentioned, and that does explain why fine art is embedded so heavily into the visuals of this film. And I think his unique background was probably responsible for so many of the different fantastic visuals on display, and even went so far as to storyboard the entire 17-minute ballet sequence. And then as far as the score was concerned, like you had mentioned, they actually scored that not based on the film like one normally would, but off of like 120-something stills, like storyboard stills that he had made. Yeah, and his work here is exquisite and sensational. And I truly wish the screenplay had characterized the same level of passion that he brought to the proceedings. What did you think?
Yeah, it's gorgeous, man. Heckroth killed it. He deserved the Oscar. They seem to be art direction and production designer Oscar manufacturers. These guys, just everybody who's a production designer or art director for the Archers just automatically gets a complimentary Oscar when they get hired. So good for them, good for him. I don't know if you saw a little bit of backstory on Hein. He was deemed an enemy of the state during the war, and actually Britain arrested him and sent him to Australia to go to prison as a prisoner of war. And there had to be like a huge outcry from the artistic community to get him bailed out of there. So this was one of his first works kind of coming back in. Like I said, he had done the costume design for Narcissus and In the Matter of Life and Death. But they wanted him to, after they lost Younga to MGM, they needed to replace him. So they're like, dude, we want you to do this. You're a painter. We want that use of color and that vibrancy and all of that, especially, really firing on all cylinders with this Technicolor camera. Jack Cardiff wanted him involved. So yeah, he decided to step up and knocked it out of the park, man. This was such a fun movie to watch, visually speaking. And I also will add, as much as we've gushed about Cardiff and his use of Technicolor and his history and just his contributions to the cinematography world, I will say something that made this stand apart from their other films that we have not seen yet is that being post-war, we're leaving the studio and going outside. So this was the first time that I've seen their use of Technicolor, Jack Cardiff's use of Technicolor, outdoors and in an outdoor setting. And especially with going to the Mediterranean and all, I think they went to the French Riviera and a couple other locations. Those, beautiful pastels, the blues, all the, vibrant colors of the ocean and the flowers and all of that just popped off the screen, man. It was so, so beautiful. The only trade-off to get that, though, is the elimination of our friend, our homie, Percy Day was off the team, doing those awesome matte paintings and backdrops that we've loved so much in their earlier works. With getting out of the studio, the only time they were really in the studio was for a lot of the office stuff, interiors, and then, of course, the ballet stuff. which they were on a stage.
Mhm.
But then, when they wanted to go outside here, they could go outside and film on the backlot now, because this was one of their first post-war films where things were all cleaned up and they could go to Europe and kind of shoot around the block a little bit. So it was a cool change of pace.
Yeah, I had noticed that a lot of those exterior shots, like the colors really just pop out at you. Like,
Yeah.
I know there's a few scenes of them outside of the train at the train station, but there's like one in particular where, they dress up a lot of the background actors in these really vibrant primary colors. And just, the natural sunlight combined with that Technicolor process, it just looked absolutely gorgeous. Again, you said it a little bit ago, but like the colors just like absolutely pop here in a way that we haven't seen. It's also funny too, because you mentioned that like all the people who work for the Archers on set design and costume design, they always get, nominated and they win these awards and such. But like the Archers themselves never got shit.
I know.
So it's almost like,
right.
It's almost like, they set other people up for success, and meanwhile they get overlooked, which is kind of a shame. I think that so often, there's a tendency to think of directing as just, frame composition and such, but the directors really set up the success of everyone else. Here in 2025, we've noticed that Denis Villeneuve has actually been like overlooked for directing Oscars for both Dune films, while everybody else got a nomination. And it's like, well, dude, who do you think like brought all these people together and set them up for success and worked with them and ideated and all this sort of stuff, So
yeah, I mean, and I would even bring to your attention too the the lighting, the dramatic lighting of a lot of these scenes, even like in the most boring, what could have been portrayed as the most boring office scene, or Valbrook, brooding or whatever, about something. He's all stewing in the corner or whatever. This film felt like, to me, what they were doing with the last 20 minutes of Narcissus, but 2 hours of it.
Yeah.
I felt like they kind of found their look a little bit with that and what they wanted to do. And they applied those same dramatic lighting concepts, that mise-en-scene that they were doing with, placing the lights and letting the actors kind of walk through it, the blocking, the very precise blocking. Again, I compared it to High and Low last episode with Narcissus. Felt like this was 2 hours of it. And it was just, again, firing on all cylinders, including but not limited to the 17-minute ballet sequence. But I do kind of set that apart. Like, that is its own kind of wonderment, that it exists in its own little bubble. But the rest of the film, all the narrative stuff here was just bathed in great camera movement, great blocking, framing, and when she's walking up the steps to that castle, and there's like that long gate space shot, and there's all the weeds kind of growing up. It's a little overgrown. You could tell, again, it's post-war. Landscapers may not have been around for a little while. They've been busy fighting a war against the Nazis, but or becoming Nazis. I just thought this whole film was just one scene after the next. I was just completely, they just kept stepping their game up, culminating in the 17-minute ballet scene. And then I agree. After that, I do agree with your opening statement. It did feel like after that, we were almost in an epilogue. Like, it was just kind of dotted after that.
Now, I do also just want to quickly, touch on the fact that this 17-minute ballet sequence that you just mentioned, this is absolutely stunning, right? Like, that's absolutely worth the price of admission. And the visuals on display there are an extension of everything that the Archers had done before. You had mentioned in A Matter of Life and Death, there was that one sequence where they like superimposed the actors so that they were like walking through that door. And that was kind of the first time that anybody had done that. And they took that even a step further with that sequence where, we've got a lot of sort of practical effects and actors and everything like that in this wonderfully, whimsical, colorful ballet sequence. And then all of a sudden she starts like walking through this, it's almost like this ethereal blue forest or landscape. And there's like all these sort of wispy clouds coming down. And, it really looks like a cool painting. And then they use superimposition to allow her to sort of dance through that. And then she ends up like falling, and she falls down to it's sort of like a silhouette of like a castle or, a city in the background on the mountains. And then we get that amazing scene, like almost my favorite part of that entire sequence, and there's a lot of them, was when she does the dance with the newspaper man, we'll call him, right? Cool. Where it's just like this collection of newspapers, and then it sort of turns into a figure of a human body. And then it actually transitions to the actor as he's doing a pirouette. That was actually one of the sequences that they had to really ramp down the frame rate to be able to give it that speed. And then you couple that with also the nature of the production design when it comes to like, you know, she's down here in this underworld, and then we see these really awesome lampposts that are made of like skulls and skeletons, and they like burn
sick.
this like candle orange, you know, and there's 2 to 3 dozen demons that come out, and she like has a dance with them and such. And so you can actually find the ballet sequence all over the internet. Like it's everywhere that you look. It's like it's its own 17-minute sequence. I want to say TCM has it up on YouTube. If anybody watching hasn't seen it yet and you'd like to check that out, you can do so right after this episode. And again, you know, like it's wonderful. Like if you're just judging the movie, like if you happen to see that scene in a vacuum without putting, you know, what came before and what came after, you would think it's like the greatest movie of all time. Let's delve into, you know, sort of what doesn't work a little bit. It sounds like we have the same opinion on this, and that's the screenplay, you know, which ultimately I found really lacking. I was kind of just as shocked as anybody who's probably watching this and thinking that we don't know what we're talking about. We know you're out there, that I wasn't really interested in any of our 3 main players outside of their just sort of inherent magnetism as gifted actors. I mean, okay, starting off, we get no backstory for the arguable protagonist, Vicky, though I will say I think a case could be made that any of the 3 characters are the protagonists of the film. They all kind of carry it at different times.
Sure.
But for example, like the whole setup is that she's this, you know, dancer trying to make it and, you know, wants to make it big, be famous, etc. But we never really see her struggle to overcome any sort of adversity. We don't see her like, you know, the training sequences of her pushing herself and, you know, giving herself bloody feet and all of that. I mean, even Black Swan did that really well, you know? And so I feel like the film kind of just serves her up as this newbie who like very quickly gets the part. And then the other part that you touched on of the screenplay is, you know, the whole reason for her struggling over the course of this movie with staying in the production is her romance, and yes, I'm putting that in air quotes, with Marius Goring's Julian Craster. And that points to another of my central problems, which is that I did not believe for a second that these 2 people truly loved each other.
Right, I agree.
They display very little intensity and passion. And so, like, when Vicky ends up walking away later from the production, you know, in order to sort of, like, be with him and be committed, like, I just didn't buy it. And it kind of seems like maybe like, you know, both of us had really the same problem with Black narcissists. And so maybe that's just kind of a Powell and Pressburger thing, is they really like want to play up the romance, but it seems like they have a problem kind of doing that, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. You know, Julian Castor played great. Let me go ahead and start by saying I feel like each one of these roles were good. Like I felt like the actors that played them crushed it. But the interaction between all 3 of the threads was really convoluted. So you've got this, you know, 3-way relationship situation where, you know, Walbrook is the head of the ballet, and then you got Vicky Page, who's, you know, we pick up with her character just as she's given her big break, right? And by Walbrook's character and all of that. And then Julian Castor is given his big break as well. He accuses Walbrook's character of stealing from him. And Walbrook's like, well, I kind of did, but how about if I hire you and give you a shot as an exchange, so I don't have to steal it from you anymore? I can get it right from the source. And he's like, bet. So then he takes his job. So we get these simultaneous 2 rocket ships of stardom launching from different pads that are going to eventually come together in this budding romance, in theory. And I'm using air quotes. I know you can't see me right now. So that's my problem, is that, you know, Craster is the very first character introduced. We see him busting up the stairs to go see this brand new ballet and hear the music. Sure as shit, he was robbed. So he's all pissed about it. And then we see him get almost equal screen time between him and Vicky Page. They're almost, you know, we're seeing them, we're cutting back and forth. And Walbrook is kind of like the intermediary between those. So he's kind of in each of those, kind of guiding their careers separately, right? But if you're going to ask me to buy in to this, you know, budding romance or whatever, they have very few interactions, Page and Castor, until probably the middle of the second act, when they're reproducing the red shoes together. Then, you know, after that, the love life of it all seemed very rushed, and certainly nothing worth jumping in front of a train for.
I know, right?
They're all like flirty and stuff, and they like go off on that little getaway. They miss the party, the big premiere party or whatever, because they're on that little getaway romp together. They're on the balcony together, and there's like some innocent little flirting there, and I could see the chemistry. I liked this better than Narcissus, where we had Mr. Dean, who had no charisma, no moxie. At least in this one, we had Marius Goring, and that's kind of like the biggest shame to me, is like everyone was killing it. All you had to do was get them together in the same room and like give them a little spice, and they would have probably been able to work with that. I think Goring is way more capable than the Mr. Dean character in Narcissus. I think that Vicky Page would have nailed that because, you know, in the later scenes when she's losing the love, as much as I didn't believe that they were ever in love, she was selling me on a loss of something that I never felt like she had in the first place, but she was still killing it. Like her tears felt like real tears. She was upset.
Actors
she was doing
were great, yeah.
Yeah, she was doing a great job of selling me on the performance of it all, but it was just never teed up in the first or second act. So by the time we got to the third act, I kind of had nothing to hang my hat on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, Ryan, you're absolutely right. I think that's actually one of the other failures of this screenplay, is that at the end of the day, there's not really much conflict that's like peppered throughout this entire screenplay. Like, we do see Vicky ultimately walk away from the production. You know, there's some disagreements at the top of the film that you alluded to between the producers and the composer and all of that. But all of these things are sort of very quickly resolved and don't lead to much at the end of the day. You know, it's famously said that like drama is born out of conflict. And without providing us those moments of conflict, we're left with a film that really works during, you know, these fantastic dance sequences. But like, the moment that we leave the stage, which, by the way, you know, as much as people present otherwise, this film spends a lot of time not on the stage, especially those final 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. You know, I just admittedly kind of found myself a little bit uninterested in what I was watching.
Same.
You know?
Absolutely the same. Yeah. I really think that the film suffers for not putting Castor and Page together earlier in the script. I really do. Like, I just feel like that they really needed to start them together. Maybe even they were, you know, friends or knew each other before. And so they're like, then you get that conflict of like them trying to root for each other, and then they both get the job and they're both on the same thing. They're like, oh, you're here too, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's make out, you know? I don't know, but something. I just, I never really bought that they were in love. And so, you know, by the time you want me to really feel the impacts of lost love, it's like, wait, what love? Like, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
They had like, you know, puppy dog love or whatever you want to call it. But like, it wasn't really anything worth jumping in front of a train over. Like I said, it just really hit me pretty hard. Like I was like, whoa, you're over dramatic. And furthermore,
hit you pretty hard like a train.
Yeah. Furthermore, Craster kind of dodged a bullet, right? Like, I don't mean to be harsh, but like, if she's going to be all over dramatic like that, if you're going to be like that about it, maybe, you know, you're better off without her, bro. Moving on. Go, quick side note. Did you also get a kick out of the fact that, I know he's a composer, but Craster played,
I know exactly where you're going with this. That he was a conductor.
He was a conductor.
Marius Goring was a conductor in this film.
Yes.
Like Conductor 71. So wonderful.
Chef's kiss. Guy just loves
Same brain,
conducting.
buddy. Same brain, buddy.
We're just out here conducting shit.
I'm so glad you said that.
We got
That's
life and death in multiple titles. We got people conducting in multiple titles. Let's do this.
The archers know what they like. They are not afraid to show you what they like.
I'm pretty shocked. I was very, very curious how you were going to feel about this movie, because I do know that you're not the biggest musical fan. It takes a really special kind of something to like get you to buy into that. And so when I saw that this had a 17-minute ballet sequence, I was like, dude, this is gorgeous. And this is definitely the centerpiece of this movie, no doubt. But I was curious how you were going to take that. Do you mind talking a little bit about, you know, what made this stand out versus other musicals that you normally don't care for? Was it just the technical side of it, the cinematography and so forth? Or what was your buy-in for the musical side of this versus other films?
Okay, so actually, I have a funny little segue. I left this note and I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not, but I think I can like bring this up here. Okay?
Love it.
And I'm going to say something that I think is an accurate description, and that's this, and then give me a chance to explain.
Okay.
The Red Shoes is the equivalent of an action movie for lovers of ballet.
Okay.
What do I mean by this? And then I'll answer your question. Action films are historically known for having these like lackluster scripts, right?
Mhm.
Instead, they spend most of their time delivering spectacular sequences of like guns a-blazing and chases on foot and like big explosions and these like brawny muscular men and all that, right?
Mhm.
I would actually argue The Red Shoes does exactly the same thing with regard to dance.
Okay.
Instead of like, big explosions and stuff like that, we get these like almost fetishistic displays of these expertly choreographed dance numbers, these exquisite stage backgrounds, fanciful music, and instead of big burly guys, we get these like graceful, beautiful ballerinas, right?
Sure.
So because of that, like the film is not shy about letting you know, like, this is what we like. This is what we here for. Like we're putting all of our eggs in the basket of like the dance sequences and the musical numbers, which translates to an energy and a vibrance and the film really coming alive. So anytime there's dancers on stage and they're doing, their performances and such, I get the sense that everybody here is really into this and they're putting their all into it and they're bringing the heat. And I'm responding to that. So I'm really enjoying those dance sequences, even though I'm maybe not necessarily a musical fan and I'm probably even less of a ballet fan. But again, that's where all of the energy went into. And so you also know that I'm a huge fan of like, the fantastic and the whimsical and the vibrant and the colorful and all of that. So like, and it's also cool because during that 17-minute sequence, Powell's not content to just leave you with this like proscenium stage view, right? Like we actually follow her in halls that are behind the stage. Like during that sequence, there are absolutely moments where she just disappears from the stage and the audience has got to be left there for like 7 minutes going like, what the hell happened to the actress? Because she's like going behind and doing all this stuff. But as a film and as, the audience member who's watching the film, I appreciated that. I appreciated the composition. I appreciated the energy. Dude, the moment where, there's several moments where actors will sort of present themselves, or dancers in this case, and then, like, I forget exactly what happens, but there's like these three people dressed in white, and they come up, and then it like does that fade into like the three flowers, that were painted. Like I love stuff like that, man. Like that's absolutely magical. And again, if I had to just base my opinion on that 17-minute dance sequence, like that's a 5-star sequence without a doubt.
Dope.
It's just everything that was like sandwiched around that I didn't really appreciate. So yeah, as a matter of fact, the musical parts of the film were the ones that I actually really loved. It was because that's when it came alive. And then as soon as they stepped off stage, it's like, oh, now we're just talking about stuff. And
bring on the demons.
And again, you pointed it out earlier, they're talking about romance that doesn't exist and all of this. So yeah, I found it really hard to connect with the rest of the film, but those were the sequences that I really loved.
You know what it felt like to me in those moments was Disney's Fantasia a little bit, where it's,
absolutely,
you got the waltzy stuff and the ballet stuff, but it's just so presented so fantastically that you can't help but buy in and love it. It's just, art on screen. So, and in all fairness, it wasn't a 2-hour musical. It had musical elements to it. So it wasn't like you're watching Chicago where people just break out into dance for no reason and, sing you some narrative exposition. It had a place in the film. Like this was a thing that they created and we're going to show you this thing. And then when it was done and we moved on from it. So, so much attention was given to the buildup of making of it, the sacrifices that everyone was giving up for it. And so it was only right that they showed it to you. And they did. And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So it really did feel like Heck Ross, one of his paintings come to life. When you go back and you look at some of those storyboards that he did for the production design team to go off of, then you watch this ballet sequence. It's like, oh yeah, dude, that's like perfect. Cardiff crushed it. So.
Yeah. And honestly, dude, like in doing some research, I do feel like that dance sequence is why everyone loves this movie, because as I was searching for, scenes that, maybe people responded to, or, they have a lot of like making of featurettes that go into these sort of Criterion releases, like the first 5 pages of Google response are all about that 17 minutes dance sequence. Like whenever anybody talks about how great this film is, everybody references that sequence. So it's like, I'm not here to debate that sequence is phenomenal. It's arguably the best dance sequence committed to film. It's just the rest of the movie that I had a problem with.
Yeah, it's the narrative structure. It's, I felt like they were trying to get that dance sequence out there and all of Heckroth's, production and Cardiff's stuff. But the love story itself at its heart, I just was lost on.
I agree. Now, Ryan, let's also touch on the score. You brought it up in your opening statement. And, it's this very big, brassy, beautiful, traditional sort of score in a very classical sense. Classic scores, if you actually analyze film here in 2025, they've kind of gone the way of the Western, which is to say that they largely don't exist in modern cinema, But here we are treated to that classic vibrant sound, which is brought to life by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, as conducted by Sir Thomas Beecham, playing a score composed by Brian Easdale. And I also thought it was interesting that much of the music is diegetic, so often we get these non-diegetic scores, but a lot of what's going on here is matching the orchestra and the musicians of the stage production itself. And, it's got this sort of like inextricable link to the wonderful visuals, like anytime we're on stage. And much like the visuals, like I have zero complaints about the score. I thought it was wonderful.
Same.
And I thought it brought a lot of life to the proceedings.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I loved Easdale's work on Narcissus. I just felt like it didn't match the mood that I was trying to feel in that moment. So when in Black Narcissus, when the nuns are, encountering plague and different things that were happening to their monastery, whatever you want, their convent, it was like all this flighty, waltzy kind of happy-go-lucky music. It was very fantastical and all of that. And so it wasn't until, you get to those last 20 minutes that his score turned dark and brooding. So I never felt like, by the time we got into Danger and Narcissus, I never felt like I was in any danger because his score was carrying a lot of the tones and themes, seeing as how you're just dealing with these pastel blue backgrounds painted by Percy Day and so forth. With this film, I felt like it matched the tones perfectly all along the way, beat for beat. Obviously, like you said, a lot of it is diegetic because you're in the theater a lot. But even when they're out in the Mediterranean on the streets of the Riviera and stuff like that, when she's finally alone with Craster and gets some of those solo moments and stuff like that, the brooding of Anna and Walbrook and all of that, I felt like Easdale really put a lot of mood behind it and really carried this film. It went hand in hand with Jack Cardiff's cinematography and the production design of Hines. So yeah, I just felt like that was like, man, that's like the dream team right there. Those three guys really made this film what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. It is unfortunate that, at least for us, it didn't all come together in exactly the way that we would have loved. But Ryan, with our central discussion concluded, let's go ahead and move on to a feature we use to end all of our episodes, 3 scenes, where we present the 3 sequences that we feel best summarize our respective responses to the film. And buddy, as always, I will let you go first.
Well, I kind of altered it. I'm going with, since this is wrapping up our series on the Archers, I changed it to 3 themes. Because I really want to talk about some things that I saw in this film and how it pertains into their total library and fits into the whole thing in total. So starting with close-ups. You stated the boring nature of close-ups in Narcissus. And it stood out to me here that they really nail it.
Yeah.
A lot of the close-ups on Moira and like the extreme makeup and making her look pale. There's a scene where in a future ballet, not in the Red Shoes ballet, but she's like blinking with one of the other dancers on stage, and like he's making her blink or whatever. There's a lot of really tight shots and then even just the brooding nature of, Anton Walbrook and stuff like that. So I thought they really nailed the power of the close-up here, where I felt like I really agreed with you that it was a waste in Narcissus because they were showing us nothing with it. The next one is outdoors. This is the Archers and Cardiff, Cardiff's first venture into outdoors, and they were known as the Technicolor Masters. So it was great to see them kind of get out there into the Mediterranean and French Riviera, like I said, and really kind of show us what Technicolor really can do when not on a studio. And not for nothing, but that must have been a beast to carry that camera around Europe and shoot outside with that big 5-ton refrigerator of a 3-strip Technicolor camera that is. And then the last one is kind of a negative, and that is a theme of lost love. Because as much as they've really seemingly gotten better technically, they've seemingly gotten worse on selling me on love and romance. So, I mean,
absolutely agree.
Colonel Blimp had 3 Deborah Kerrs in a bromance with Theo. They had 4 love stories in that thing. And they sold me on all 3 of them. And then we got Matter of Life and Death, which was pretty solid. Guys trying to come back from heaven and really fight for his lady, his old gal, and like, I want to come back for love. Even though it was a little rushed in the beginning, they got right into it. They sold me. David Niven sold me on that. He was like, hey, I'm coming back for you. I'm coming back from heaven. And he really sold me on that from jump. But then we get into these later things, Narcissist with Mr. Dean, and then now this. And I just, really, I feel like they're getting worse. And so Lost Love would be my third theme that I've pinpointed in this one that stood out against their other films. How about you?
Nice. Yeah. I didn't get creative or anything, so I still have just our regular 3 scenes here, and I'll go ahead and deliver those now. The first is one that you actually mentioned at the top of this episode, which is Vicky arriving at the conference. This is where, she shows up in that dress and she walks up the staircase and all of that. Mm-hmm. And it highlights both the stellar costuming. I thought that her dress was just absolutely gorgeous. It's this very elegant, sort of pleated light blue dress. And it also shows off the incredible set pieces. Now, most of the set pieces are, actually stage productions and set design and all of that. In this case, we get sort of this grand mountainous stone staircase that looks like it was naturally built and been there for centuries that she ascends to meet the producers and directors on location. Thought that was really wonderful. You mentioned it several times. My second scene is the final scene where Vicky throws herself off the balcony. And I think that this illustrates the parts of the screenplay that don't work, where, by the way, can we just throw this out? For some reason, the Archers seem to love concluding their movies with someone falling from a very great height. Like, it's the same thing as Black Narcissus. Like, okay, fine. Like,
yeah.
Again, the Archers know what they like. They sort of will recycle these themes and these images and such. But, I highlight this because it should be a dramatic conclusion, but honestly, I really just didn't care. I was kind of relieved to know that the film was kind of coming to an end because, like I said, after those final 45 minutes, it didn't really do much to progress the story forward. Like I said, it kind of used all its tricks at that point. There's no more fantastical 17, minute ballet sequence or even a 3-minute awesome, phantasmagoric ballet sequence. So it almost feels like they kind of just, blew their load a little bit on like that sequence right there. And maybe they even, blew most of the budget on that. But that does lead to the third scene, which is, yes, of course, that absolutely spectacular 17-minute ballet sequence.
Sure.
It's everything that's right and wonderful and whimsical with the film. It's endlessly imaginative. Like, if someone was going to respond to the aspects of this review that we found less than by citing any part of that 17-minute sequence, that's not accurate. We're not saying, like I said, that's a 5-star sequence day in, day out. Like, even if I don't watch this movie again, like, I will just pull up that sequence on YouTube or wherever and watch it again because it's amazing. Like,
yeah,
it's one of those scenes that you see on like a trailer or behind the scenes, or you just see it in a vacuum for whatever reason. And you're like, oh man, that's absolutely amazing. There's no way I'm not going to love this film. Right. But then you watch the whole film and there's all this other stuff that's around it that just does not work in that same way. So, it incorporates all the aspects of the film that work: dance, paintings, visual effects, creativity, fine art, all of that, And again, if you're watching and you haven't seen that scene, it's all over the internet. Please do go give it a watch. It's really a spectacular sequence.
I could not believe they showed her post-train incident. When they brought her back, like, they showed her jump off the thing, and we all knew, and you saw the puff of train smoke, and you're like, oh, fuck, she jumped to her doom. She's falling in love. I get it. Okay, the whimsy and the puns are all there. But then they cut back to her, and she's like, I'm not dead yet. Please.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. She would be way more mangled than that if she got hit by a train. They just got a couple little blotches of red on her. She's like, oh, you got some red on you, in a very Shaun of the Dead kind of way. And I was like, no way they brought her back to take the shoes off. They should have had Craster come back with the shoes, all sad and morose, and been like, this is all I have left, or something, holding nothing but the shoes so that we know but yeah, to cut back to her laying on the stretcher and a crowd of people around her, all, looking on as she's giving her last words after being mangled by a train is just like, wow, that is a bold choice, my friends.
Dude, what's so hysterical about that is that actually totally is yet one more way that it's an action movie for ballet lovers. 'Cause
Yes!
that's what every action movie does. The villain gets shot like 17
Yep.
times, and then he's crawling, and he's like, wait, let me unveil my plan for you, and then like goes into it. So like,
Right.
just, wow, perfect.
Yeah,
sir.
it's the
Perfect.
Tropic Thunder Ben Stiller deal where he's like all blown up, you know.
Yeah.
Got his gun. It's the Darth Vader scene with he's, take my mask off. It's the whole thing. Yeah, we've seen it, but maybe they originated it. This is the OG of that scene, I guess. So kudos. Shrug, I guess.
Kudos to them for establishing a trope, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, Ryan, that's actually a perfect, I think, wrap up for here. So let's go ahead and end this review as we always do with our formal star rating. I will go ahead and tell you that for me, again, technically speaking, when it comes to the set direction, the art direction, the cinematography, couldn't get enough of that, as wonderful as could be. But man, the story just dragged. The characters did not feel realistic, and that romance was just non-existent. So for me, this was a 3.5 out of 5-star movie. How about you, buddy?
I'm giving this one a little higher than you, but not much. I'm going 3 3/4. I just a technical masterpiece. Felt a little flat. I would watch this again. I think it warrants a rewatch. Now that I kind of know what this is and can get a vibe for it, maybe I can gather a little more out of some of the performances. But I thought the performances were there. Just the characterization. I think the script is really what got me. Everything else was firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
So I can't go much lower than that for myself.
Now, this does conclude our review of The Red Shoes, as well as our mini-series on the works of Powell and Pressburger. If you like this review, please do like and subscribe, and also tell your friends about us. We love to have more people join the party. And we also, if you did enjoy it, you can also check out the other 3 reviews we did in this mini-series. That's The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, A Matter of Life and Death, as well as Black Narcissus. And, this is a bit dangerous given our response to the film, because I know people love this film. Like you mentioned, Ryan, it's number 9 on BAFTA's all time. If you go online, it's just nothing but love for this film. Even so, we invite you to leave a comment on the YouTubes. Let us know what you thought about the film, or what you thought about our breakdown here today. Do you agree that the screenplay can't match the visuals? Or do you think we're just a bunch of troglodytes with no business commenting on the nature of cinema? Either way, we would love to know what you have to say. This has been another episode of Esoterica Cinema. For myself, Jason Peters, and my good friend Ryan Seybold, keep on appreciating film and enjoy the movies.